been in the industry. I've been in the field for a long time. I started as a DSP when I was, I don't know, 18 or 19 and starting my college career. And I became a case manager a couple years after that. And I toured, I think I had a client that was at Elim. I was at a different agency. And so I saw Elim for the first time. And it was like my dream for many years to be a case manager there. But there was never an opening. So you guys are at a great place. And I'm really honored to be able to speak to all of you today. Um, I'm going to share my screen here. So hopefully I'm sharing the right um, slideshow. So let's see if that looks correct. I don't, I think so. No,
Yeah, it looks good.
I know, but it's not moving. So I'm sharing
Oh,
the wrong one. So let me try that one more time. For some reason, I think this might be the right one here. So let's see. There we go. Okay. So you guys should see agenda for the day, correct? Okay, good. So, we already did introductions, so thank you very much. I can't see everybody here, but I understand that this is a majority parents who have their kids are in transition, so you guys are starting to learn all about the things that are going to happen after school. And of course, employment is an option. There's different options for your kids once they graduate. And I'll be mainly talking about employment services not just at Helping Hand, but also kind of through the state. And it's very, very similar from agency to agency that you go to. There will be some differences based on agency models that different agencies use, but for the most part, it will be very similar among different agencies. I'll also touch on some other services that Helping Hand provides. I'm very proud to be working for such a great agency that provides so many different resources for the clients that we serve and the families that we serve. So I'll touch real briefly on some things, just because there's some people that don't know all of the different things that we do. So I want to let folks know. I will discuss in detail what employment services is and who we serve. So you have an idea of whether employment would be a good fit for your son or daughter. I will talk about the importance of puns in waiver services. I've been pounding on this for years and years and years because it's so important once an individual goes from school to the adult services world. I understand that Suburban Access is going to be doing a talk for you guys in March, I believe, which is going to be really great. They're fantastic and phenomenal, and they're the experts. But I'll touch briefly on it to kind of wet your whistle, and hopefully you can come up with some questions for Suburban Access when they're there in a couple months. I'll discuss the various funding and services within employment services. So funding is really important, regardless of the services you're looking for. Thankfully, in the state of Illinois, funding for employment services is fairly accessible for people. So you don't necessarily have to get pulled from the PUNS list and have home-based services to be able to use employment funding in Illinois. We'll speak briefly also about neurodiverse trainings for businesses that we also often provide, whether we have somebody working at that business or not. It's been really valuable to work with different employers in terms of the different ways they can work with their neurodiverse employment team members. And then we'll talk about next steps. So once you start to get towards graduation, what are some of those next steps you need to think about in terms of employment services? And then I'll certainly leave time at the end of the presentation for questions, but if questions come up as we go, feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself. I want this to be fairly organic. Sometimes a question will help guide or lead the discussion in a direction that I didn't necessarily anticipate, but might be really helpful for the group. So if you have questions as we go, feel free to ask them. And I have to apologize. I'm getting over this terrible cold that's been going around, so I'm feeling fine. But the more I talk, the more I tend to want to cough. So I have a whole bunch of Hall's lozenges that I'll be working on as we go through the presentation. Okay, so who is Helping Hand? Excuse me. Our mission is at the bottom of the screen there. It's transforming lives of all connected to Helping Hand through genuine care and education. And that's really the crux of all of the services that we provide and all the interactions that we have with the individuals, not just individuals, but this talk I'm having with all of you today, the employers that we speak with, the different vendors, and the different other stakeholders we come into contact with. It's our mission to transform those lives through genuine care and education that we can provide to people. So we do have a therapeutic school very similar to Elim. It has over 70 students, and the school really addresses students that have behavioral challenges that are not able to be adequately handled within their home district. So we have students from all different districts coming to our school, which is in Countryside. And oftentimes, through the treatment plans through our school, we'll be able to see those students return back to their home district. That's really the goal, so that they can finish their high school or their grade school or high school career at that school that they originally came from. We also have an outpatient clinic that provides speech therapy, physical and occupational therapy. We also have feeding therapy as well. Some of you may be familiar with that. And a service that we provide that we just started last year was a therapist specifically for parents and siblings of the clients that we serve. We realized that you guys have a really hard job, and it doesn't necessarily end when your kids get older. So we have found that having that therapist on staff for family members and for siblings to be able to speak with has, excuse me, been really valuable in the treatment of the clients that we also work with. And then we have our adult programs, which we have community living, which would be like a residential group home, SILA, you may have heard that term. That's generally a 4 to 6 person home that's staffed 24/7 by staff members in order for those folks to be able to move out of their family homes, but still and exercise some independence, but also still have staff support when they need it. We also have a day program in Hodgkins, which serves about 200 people. And that is a program that just gives people a meaningful day so that they continue to learn, they continue to be entertained, they continue to have meaningful interactions with their peers and relationships. And they do all kinds of things from art to music to science to health and wellness to mindfulness activities. And then some community outings as well, so they get out into the community. And then last but not least is employment services, which what this presentation is mainly going to be focused on. And that is, we have several different tiers of employment that I'll talk about, but there's everything from working in the community completely independent to being supervised by a job coach the whole time you're working to some things in between. And we also have a employment program that works with students in their last year of transition. That's pretty unique and it's quite successful. So I'll talk a bit about that as well. So what are employment services? So we assist people who may need additional supports to be successful and equally valued team members at their places of employment. So the first thing that we start with is once someone comes to us and they're looking for help with getting a job, is once we go through an intake process and they're approved for funding, we start with job development. You can think of job development as the work that's done before you get a job. So working on treating a resume. Or actually, I probably have some of these things in here. Here we go. We do an employment inventory. So we have some software that we use to ask a bunch of questions to find out exactly what someone would like to do. Or even if they're unaware, some industries they might be skilled at or might have some interest in based on how they answer those questions. We assist with creating a resume based on their past work and volunteer experiences. Some of your kids may already be doing some trial work or some work out in the community, and that we can put on that resume as well. That helps bolster up their resume. We also assist with applying for jobs and completing job applications. I don't know if any of you have applied to a job in the last 5 or 6 years, but the applications online can be very extensive and very time consuming. So we assist our clients with that, but we also expect them to search around for different jobs that they might like. We expect them to be proactive with looking for jobs and then sending those applications to the job developer. We also work with them on confidence and assertiveness skills in prep for interviews. Not just prep for interviews, but also once they get a job, being able to feel comfortable to talk to their boss or talk to a coworker about some challenges they may be having, or talk to the job coach about the challenges they may be having. And then we will, depending on the individual and the application and interview process, we will oftentimes accompany the job seeker to an interview. We don't always do that. We really like to provide people as much independence as possible. But if it helps us to be there to provide support, whether it's actually in the interview with them or maybe just outside of the interview, we will also do that as well. So moving on, we have job placement and job coaching. So this you can think of as once someone gets an offer letter and now they've been offered a job, there's some additional services we provide on that side of things as well. So we have a staff member called a job coach. So a job coach will accompany that individual on their first day for onboarding and helping them orient around the workplace. Also helping them understand who their supervisor is, who they can go to for questions as they continue to progress to their job. So the job coach will assist in training the new hire with job tasks, expectations, and company culture. We don't necessarily do the job for them, or we don't do the job for them, but we will help to coach them and to train them on what that job is. Over time, we have a process called fading. So that means that we will fade support over time. So it's a gradual reduction in time and supports for the new hire as they become more independent and become more skilled at the job. And it's different for everybody, right? So somebody might need more job coaching for a longer period of time based on their skill level, their ability to adapt, and also what the job is. Some people don't need that much time. We've seen people that after the first day, we really don't need to be there except for some check-ins that we need from time to time. And then we've seen some folks that maybe need more intensive supports for the first month or two. And it's really tailored to what that individual needs. We also consult with the supervisor and also the family too on how things are going to assess when we should step back or when we need to provide more supports going forward. Typically, job coaching, once someone starts a job, lasts between 6 to 9 months, depending on the need. Sometimes we'll close them a little sooner to job coaching. And then once job coaching is done and we've closed them to services, they are on their own, completely independent. But we don't do that until we're confident that they have the skills and the independence to be able to maintain that employment long term, if that's their goal with that job. The job coach also provides general training and support to managers and employees. And this is really important and a real benefit to having an agency like Helping Hand or another agency be an intermediary with the employee and the employer, in that we can help mitigate any kind of issues that come up. We can help with communication. We can help training the employer and the other employees there about best ways to communicate with that individual or best ways to work out difficulties or challenges that come up. So who are our clients? That's a picture of Sarah, who works at a little boutique, like a spa in LaGrange, and she's been there for many years. She loves it there, and they love having her. So our clients, they have to be at least 18 years old. That's based on some contract information I'll talk about in a few minutes. But they have to be 18 years old or older and have a documented intellectual or developmental disability. Emotional disabilities also qualify as well, but also other disabilities like deaf or hard of hearing, blind, etc. They have to have a great willingness to work in competitive employment. So I get calls from time to time from parents that are like, yeah, my son, he graduated high school a few years ago. All he's been doing around is sitting on the couch playing video games. We want him to get a job. And I'll say, that's great. Does he want to get a job? And they say, well, we want him to get one. I said, well, he has to want this. And so then that's where that discussion begins, is that employment, there has to be a desire for that employment from that individual. They have to be interested in working either part-time or full-time. I will be honest with you, majority of our clients work part-time for several reasons. One is to maintain benefits that they have with the state. The more money that you make, generally your benefits are reduced, or they can even be lost based on how much you earn. But also, many of our clients just don't have the physical or the intellectual stamina for a 40-hour week. It's just it can be a lot for folks. So it also depends on the work. If it's a real physical job, that's a lot of physical stamina that somebody has to have. But we also talk about that during the intake process. And the individuals that we work with have skills and interests as varied as the people that are on this call. So if we went down the list, I'm sure we all have most of us will have different careers that we work in based on our interests and our motivation. And the clients that we have coming to us have the same interest. Like we have a guy that was hired as a surgical tech not long ago because that was his interest. He had a certification in that and was really skilled at that. And then we have somebody that's really interested in animals and they have a vet assistant certification. And then we have folks that may want to be like a bagger or jewel. We have a few people that do carts and bagging and jewel, kind of that front end responsibility or stocking. So there's all kinds of different kinds of things that people like to do. And we do our best to accommodate those interests and find jobs for those folks in those areas. All right, so let's talk for a few minutes about puns and waiver funding. Hopefully, you guys have heard this enough that you're sick about hearing it, and you're all on the puns list, and maybe even some of you or your kids have been pulled for home-based funding. If you don't know what puns is, it is the acronym PUN stands for the Prioritization of Urgency and Need for Services. And it's a statewide database, much like a waiting list in the state of Illinois, for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It helps the state identify the needs and plan for future support with different categories such as seeking services or maybe planning for services later. And this is something that you would talk to an agency like Suburban Access about and get on their get with or make an appointment with a service coordinator there about getting on the PUNS list. Like I said, if you're not on the PUNS list, get on it today. Write down this phone number and call them after this meeting so that you can get onto that PUNS list. I should say your child. It's really your child. It's not you. But it's really important. The sooner you get on there, the sooner eventually they'll get pulled for services. And sometimes the wait can be 5 years or more to wait for that. So the sooner the better. So waiver funding, which is what one of the funding services that people can receive when they're pulled from the wait list, often called home-based services you may have heard of, or it can also be used for SILA or group home funding. It's key to services for your child as they exit the school world and enter the adult world. Once they leave school, those services they have in school don't transfer with them. They have to have some kind of funding, or if you have the ability to private pay, you can do that as well, but that can be very, very expensive, thousands and thousands of dollars a month for services. Like I said, the only current alternative to waiver funding is private pay. And then a requirement for individuals to receive waiver funding is that they are receiving Medicaid medical benefits. So if you don't have, or your son or daughter does not currently have Medicaid funding, that's something to look into, because when they get pulled from the PUNS list, they will either need to apply for or already have Medicaid funding in order to continue that application process for funding. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm throwing a lot at you guys. Okay. So let's talk about funding for employment services. In the state of Illinois, it's a little unique in terms of employment services that you don't need to be on the PUNS or pulled from PUNS or have home-based waiver to be able to utilize funding in Illinois for employment services. The state of Illinois has an employment first mentality in that once a student graduates high school, we would like the first option for them to be employment. That's not going to be true for everybody, but that we want to at least start there and see where we can go. So the state has made application for this funding very, very simple. So all initial funding for employment services goes through, there's a lot of acronyms we use. So it's DRS, or the Department of Rehabilitation Services, which is a division of the Department of Developmental Disabilities. So our team, let's say that you call us and you say, yeah, I want my son or daughter to work with Helping Hand and to get a job. We would do the initial application on referral to DRS in order to secure funding for your son or daughter. We have contracts with different funding sources through DOORS, or it's also called DOORS or DRS, that we might recommend your son or daughter into a specific funding stream based on their skills and the work that they want to do and the support they may need. So we have 3 different contracts with DRS. One is called Milestone, one is called SEP or Supported Employment, and another is called Project Search. And I'll speak for a few minutes about each one of those. So milestone funding, that is the largest contract we have, just because of the fact that a majority of the clients we work with fit into that milestone contract or fit into the supports that that contract allows. So what happens is once we get a referral from either a parent or some other agency, we will then do an intake with that individual and the family. And after we do the intake and we feel that we can support that person, we'll then send that person a referral to DRS. And then DRS also does their own intake process, and then they will place that person into a contract based on their assessment. So DRS refers to a customer to Helping Hand for job development and placement services. So oftentimes we'll also get referrals from DRS. A family or a client might go to DRS first and say, I want a job. And they'll say, you should work with a provider like Helping Hand or another agency. And then they refer them to us. So we get referrals both ways, either from people just calling in, asking for services, but also from doors referring services or individuals to us for services. I mentioned we clean an assessment and an intake process. And then after our assessment is completed, we agree to take the case. That's when the job development portion begins. That's when we start to talk about preparing for interviews and creating a resume, and then also working on applying to jobs. So job development consists, like I said, of resume building and interviewing skills, follow-up and in-person supports for interviews. And then once a client's offered a job, we assist with the pre-employment support, which is the onboarding, and then the one-on-one job coaching to provide training and support. And then upon hire, clients meet 3 different milestones. So this is why this contract is called a milestone, in order for us to bill and be paid for our services. So once the individual is employed for 15 days, we then bill for that. Once they reach employment for 45 days, we bill for that. And then once they reach 90 days of employment, they are considered placed by DRS, and then DRS would close their case. However, we continue to work with clients for another 3 months after that, so that we can continue to provide those intermittent supports and make sure that their placement is secure in the future. And like I said earlier, we provide about 9 months of support from the time that we start working with them until the time that we close their case. Any questions about that so far? Okay. The next category of contract that we have that would be for people that might need more support and more support over a longer period of time is called supported employment. And again, this works very much in terms of like the intake process and the referral process. It's identical to the milestone contract. So DRS places individuals into this contract based on the initial assessment. Again, they refer the customer to us. Helping Hand completes the assessment as a part of the intake process. And then again, once that's completed, job development begins. Job development is the same as for milestone about resumes, applying to jobs, following up on applications, and providing support during interviews. And then once someone's offered a job and hired, we provide that one-on-one job coaching assistance. And this is where it's a little different for supported employment than it is for milestone. Supported employment, again, is funding over a longer period of time, so it allows longer periods of job coaching with that individual. So someone deemed necessary that we need more employment or more job coaching for that person to maintain employment, they would be in this contract. And in this contract, the SAP funding is a little different. We're paid in phases. So based on how many phases the person goes through, then we're paid and reimbursed based on those. And so those are about every 8 weeks. So every 8 weeks, we have a staffing with the doors counselor and our team and the individual and the family to discuss how the job is going and continue to work on independence. But the ideal is that the person is employed and independent within 18 months. So you can see that's a much longer time period that we get to work with this person and provide that support for independence in the long run. The last contract we have is something fairly unique. I think there's only 5 providers in the state of Illinois that have this project search funding and program. So this is a program that works with students in their last year of transition. They apply to the program, and if they're accepted, they then, instead of going to school, their last year, like let's say it was an Elim student, instead of going to Elim, their last year of transition, they would actually go off-site to a host business. We call them a host business, in which they would get their employment training, but also they do, and I'll get into this in a moment, they do 3 different internships in different places in that host business. So there's a completion process that they do through the project search team. Our team consists of our local school district co-op, which is called LADSI, which is kind of the LaGrange area, since we're out this way. But it's not limited to schools within LADSI. So, for example, we have schools that are farther north, farther west, and then also if it was a student from Elim, that would be a possibility as well. But there's a rigorous process in terms of the application process, but also there's a skills assessment that we do as well to make sure that the person has the necessary skills to get into and be successful in the program. Once they're accepted, the student becomes an intern because they do these internships and begins their final year of transition in project search. So job development, which is almost the whole year. So if you think of a school year, job development is almost that whole school year. It consists of 3 10-week internships in different departments. Oh, it says of the hospital. So our host business is LaGrange Hospital. So we have an intern might do an internship in like the cafeteria. So they'll learn all the different jobs and have some specific jobs within the cafeteria. Or they might work in wound care. Now, they're not actually doing like treatment on patients, but they might help with getting supplies or creating supply bins for patients, or they might assist with like the transportation department when a patient is released from the hospital, they get wheeled out in a wheelchair. An intern might actually do that. So they do have some engagement with the patients, but a majority of the time it's working within different departments and with the staff in those departments to complete different skills and jobs. And we found that through those internships, they really learn what it's like to be on the job and to have to master those skills, much different than being in school or like doing chores at home. It's very much an internship process for them. In addition to the internships, the interns also have 2 weeks of classroom work before each internship. So in those classroom settings, they learn about how to maintain a budget. They learn about appropriate dress and appropriate behavior on the job, how do you behave at a job rather than you do at home or with your friends or even in school? So there's a lot of classroom work that goes into it, but then that classroom work is reinforced during the internships. So we bill for these services after interns complete their first two internships. So for the first two, we can bill for those and get paid for those. And then once a client is, so the ultimate goal of this program is employment. So after they finish their first two internships, then we can start to apply for jobs and help them get employed. And then from there, employment looks very much like the milestone contract in which we provide supports for 90 days and then 3 months after that. But job coaching is exactly the same for these interns. Once they get a job, we provide those one-on-one on-the-job support so that they are supported. We can increase independence and they can learn their job and then also learn the natural supports on the job there as well. I mentioned the 90 days. So once they meet 90 days of employment, we're allowed to bill, but also that means that they are closed to doors services. But we continue to work with them for another 3 to 6 months after that. And generally, this is the longest period of time we work with individuals, 18 to 24 months on average of support, because we start working with them at the beginning of the school year, through the whole school year, and then another 6 months after that once they're placed in employment.
There was a question in the chat, Jim,
Yeah,
if you want to answer it now.
I can't see it because
Yeah, I can read it to you.
That'd be great.
Do you factor in where the client resides in order to be a candidate for Project Search?
Yes. Not so much. But a majority, I mean, we've had people, so for example, the hospital in LaGrange, right? And our office is in Hodgkins. We've had students that are all the way out in Lockport, all the way up in like the Melrose Park area. So it's not very close. But generally, the school district will work with the family to arrange transportation to the hospital. So, for example, they might arrange for a cab or a bus or whatever it might be. But that's part of the school district's responsibilities to arrange that transportation. If there's, I'll also provide at the end of the presentation my email address. If you guys have questions after this, you can always reach out to me and email me, or you have specific questions or like about a specific area. But kind of in relation to that, something I didn't mention is that we also, when we do job development, we try to find jobs for people that are within their community. So like if someone lives in, let's say, Crestwood, I live in Crestwood, so I live just down the street from Elim. We're not going to place them up in Melrose Park for a job. That's just ridiculous in terms of placement. We would try to find someplace close to their home and then also work out what the transportation would look like for that. So hopefully that answered that question. Any other questions right now? Okay. If there's any more questions in the chat, just let me know. I'm not looking at the chat. I'm looking at the slideshow, so feel free to interrupt.
I got you.
So the last, I mentioned a bit of the support that we provide ongoing for individuals that might need additional supports beyond the intermittent job coaching that we do, and that's called enclave support. So clients who are in enclave setting are funded through Department of Human Services waiver funding. So this kind of work, an individual would need to be pulled from the PUNS list and have that home-based waiver funding, or be living in a group home or a SILA that has waiver funding. So enclave sites are continually overseen by a job coach. Generally, it's called enclave because it's usually a group of clients that work in one place. So we have 2 enclave sites right now, both manufacturing, in which there's 3 clients to 1 job coach. So what happens is what it looks like is they meet at our day program in the morning, and then the job coach drives them all to their place of business, place where they work. And then all 3 of them work there, and the job coach can supervise all 3 of them to make sure that they stay on track. If they have questions, the job coach is there to support them. So the job coach is there on site the whole time. And then at the end of the day, job coach drives them back to the day program, and then they go home from there, whether they live at in home with their family, or they live in one of the group homes that we oversee as well. So it's a completely supported program. The aim of this program is to increase an individual's uh, independence so that they can move from this enclave fully supported program to independent employment. That's really the aim of the program. So we're always working on increasing independence, increasing skills so that someone can move from the enclave funding out into independent employment so that they can get a job in the community without being overseen by a job coach all the time. I just mentioned it's a stepping stone towards independent community employment. And then in terms of the partnerships that we have with employers, the advantages of and when we speak to employers about the advantages of working with our population, is that they get dedicated, hardworking employees. We found that the folks that work in employment services are extremely dedicated. They're extremely loyal to their employers and their jobs, and they just love working. They just love being able to have a job. I love to tell the story about this guy that I worked with many years ago. He worked at McDonald's. He was a dishwasher, and then he also maintained like the beverage area and the condiment area. And he worked specific days. Those are the days he worked. I don't, maybe it was like Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, something like that. And it so happened that one of the days he worked was Christmas Day, and McDonald's was closed that day. And he said, "Okay, I'm going to work." And we said, "No, McDonald's is closed today." And we even gave him a couple days notice, let him know, like, work's closed. You're not going to work this day. And he was adamant. "I have to go to work. They need me there. I have to go to work." And we're like, "No, it's closed today. You don't have to go to work today. You get the day off. Enjoy." But he was really adamant about it. So eventually he agreed and stayed home. But I said, "You can go to McDonald's if you want, but you're not going to be able to get in. It's locked." But we found that our folks are extremely dedicated and loyal to their employers. And because of that, there's reduced turnover with the employers as well. So they see that the individuals that we place aren't turning over quickly. They maintain their employment for years sometimes. An interesting statistic that we found is that when when companies hire an individual with a disability, it somehow, we don't know how, but improves their company culture. It's really an interesting phenomenon that I think is really neat. Working with individuals with disabilities is that it improves the overall culture within the company. It's pretty neat. And we've also seen increased productivity from the individuals that we employ. We work on communication with management and work on best practices and training and implementation for those folks, so they have best practices working with the folks that they have employed there that might have a disability. And then organizations and businesses can take advantage of the work opportunity tax credit when they employ somebody that has a disability. This also applies, I believe, to veterans and some other groups as well, that if they employ those folks, they're able to get a tax credit from those things. And the beautiful thing about all this is that there is no cost to the individual seeking services or the employer, other than the employer paying an employee a wage. All of the services that we provide are funded through the Department of Human Services. So there's no outgoing cost unless someone chooses to pay privately. Then there would be a private pay cost for that. These are some of the testimonials. This guy on the left here, or he's in the left-hand picture. The guy with the backwards hat, his name is John. He works at National Seating Mobility, which is a huge distributor and servicer of wheelchairs and walkers and things like that. But John's job there is to clean all of the wheelchairs that come into that facility, and he does an amazing job. And you can see here that John is well-liked. He's a well-liked employee here at NSM. His work ethic is impeccable. The staff from Helping Hand have been wonderful as well. They have created job aids that have helped John be so successful here. And then one of our other partners, Marshalls, said that partnering with Helping Hand gave us an opportunity to gain two great employees. Having their support and guidance during training was very beneficial. So it's always nice to hear from the employers that we're actually doing a good job and that are getting good candidates as well. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was the neurodiverse training that we do for businesses. We have one coming up with the Brookfield Zoo that we did last year, but we're going to do it again for some new managers that they have. But we'd like to provide these trainings for hiring managers, for supervising managers, sometimes for executives as well, in terms of working with the neurodivergent population. So we will generally talk to that business first to tailor the presentation to their needs and goals, because they all have different needs and goals in terms of DEI and things like that. We work on training them on creating a supportive and inclusive environment that boosts job satisfaction for both neurodivergent employees, but also their neurotypical employees. Businesses that embrace neurodiversity can access a wider talent pool, so they can look at folks they may not have thought of before, that are highly skilled. They may have autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and other neurological differences. And then neurodiversity training ensures that companies comply with legal requirements on diversity inclusion, and also demonstrates the company's commitment to social responsibility and increasing their brand image. So, what are next steps for you guys? I know that you guys are still in transition, so you have some time to plan, which is really great. If you wanted to, like I said, contact me, my phone number there is there, and also my email address, and I'll also be sending these slides out to you, or you guys, or Sarah, if you would like to send the slides out, you're more than welcome to. You also visit our website, helpinghand-il.org, for the different services that we have, especially employment services. But this is just a small sampling of the different agencies or organizations that we work with, and we work with quite a few more than this, but these are some of the bigger ones. So it's always nice to be able to develop those relationships with those employers. So, what questions do you guys have that I can answer? I'm going to stop sharing for now and see everybody.
There's nothing in the chat right now. But I had a question. I wanted to
Sure.
ask, so you had shared that if someone came looking for supports, then you guys would open a DRS case on their behalf. What if someone already has an open DRS case?
That's a great question, because I imagine a majority of your students do through like STEP or one of the other school programs. It's actually much easier because they already have that case opened. If let's say they're moving from high school funding to adult funding through DRS, DRS would just do an internal transfer to transfer that funding, let's say from STEP to a milestone or an SCP contract.
Okay.
Great question. Yeah.
And you had also talked about the enclave with ongoing job support as more of a stepping stone. I feel like there are students here who could potentially be successful in a job with long-term, ongoing support. So could that potentially be, not permanent, but could it be long-term if someone really wasn't ready to move on to independent employment?
Yes. So we have several clients that either because they just haven't been able to move into that independence, or because they love the job they have and they don't want to leave, which is the case with some of them. They are long-term enclave clients. So I think the longest we have there is maybe a guy that's been there about 8 years. I would like to see him move on and into independent employment. That he just, every time I talk to him, he says, Jim, I just like where I work. That's just where I want to stay. I'm like, okay, that's your choice. He's very comfortable with having a job coach there. I think he would be very uncomfortable not having a job coach, even as we would tier that fading of supports. So that's one situation where someone just chooses not to leave the enclave. But then, yes, we also have individuals that, based on their skill level or their capacity, might not be able to move out of that. And they would never be penalized for that. It's not like we're going to kick them out of that. But I would love to see somebody that maybe needs some real intensive supports for a couple of years, and then gain the independence and the skills to be able to move from that enclave situation into more independent employment in the community.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
There is a question in the chat. Someone asked, my daughter is in the first year of transition. When would be a good time to seek services from Helping Hands?
Great question. I would say probably the last year of transition, with the only exception being Project Search. If you wanted your son or daughter to be a part of Project Search, I would look at that as start looking into that. And we do tours. We can have the team from Elim come out and do a tour of Project Search, or even family members if they wanted to. But probably your second or third year of transition if you're looking at Project Search, because that application, like for example, we're taking applications starting in December, we started this past December for the next school year. So all of that you'd want to be doing the second or third year of transition Project Search. If you're looking at employment services that doesn't require Project Search employment services, but like post graduation, I would say the last year of transition, maybe once school starts, end of August, September, maybe November, October, November, once things have settled a bit. You can reach out to us. We have an admissions department as well that I could always refer you to if you're looking for services beyond employment services. But yeah, I would say that last year of transition, start to discuss those things. Also, and I'm sure that Elam will alert you guys too about things like, or this might have happened already, guardianship, Social Security, all those kinds of things happen around the 18th birthday, or planning for that prior to 18th birthday.
All right, I think that was everything. There's nothing else in the chat. If anyone has any other questions, jump in. But I just wanted to thank you so much for being here, Jim. This has been really great information for us to hear. I've learned a lot and I've heard a lot of this already. So it's good to hear
Oh, good.
again.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it takes a few, at least for me, it takes a few runs through to remember stuff. But yeah, it's the adult world can be very confusing, especially employment. So again, if any of you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to answer those questions for you. But yeah, like I said, if you got anything out of this, puns, make sure you get on the puns list, because that is the key to all, except for employment services, all funding out into the adult world. It's so, so important. And I just been preaching that for years, and I don't ever want to see a family graduate high school, get into the adult world and say, how do we pay for this stuff? And it's like, well, puns or private pay. So yes, please do that. And I know you guys are going to have a presentation about that, which will be fantastic. I've seen that presentation before, so that would be very helpful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. All right, everybody, have a good rest of your day.
Have a good day.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.